Welcome to another episode of What Are You Reading? What Are You Writing? I'm Carren E. Osborne, author of Getting It Right and the upcoming murder mystery, women's fiction, Tangled Lies, which comes out on July 22nd. And I'm so glad that you are with us because I want to introduce you to an amazing Renaissance woman, Carren Strock. I'm going to read, she's going to tell you all about herself and she's going to do most of the talking, but I get to read her amazing profile. So hold on, here we go. She really is a Renaissance woman. She is the author of the groundbreaking book and previously undiscussed topic, Married Women Who Love Women, now in its third edition. She is also the author of A Writer's Journey, What to Know Before, During, and After Writing a Book. She wrote In the Shadow of the Wonder Wheel, a mystery novel set in Coney Island, New York. Tangled Ribbons, a lesbian paranormal romance. How intriguing is that? Grandpa and Me and the Park in the City, a rhyming picture book for children. Do you see why I call her a Renaissance woman? Potatoes with Appeal, 105 mouth-watering recipes. I have never, ever met a potato that I didn't like. This is a cookbook dedicated to people like me, her love for the potato. And her latest book, Secret Survivors, a gripping middle grade chapter book, which I have already purchased for my 9-year-old grandson, my middle grandson. But that's not all. Her artwork has been honored in both regional and international art shows and has been exhibited at the Albright Knox Art Gallery. Her photographs have appeared in architectural magazines, and her articles have appeared in numerous publications in the US and abroad. Welcome, welcome, Carren. So glad to have you. I don't know which of your many talents we should talk about, but since this is about reading and writing, let us start first with what are you reading these days? What might you recommend to our audience?
Oh, gee, I just finished one. Oh God, I think it's A Library Woman of Troublesome Creek. I hope I have the title correct because I can't remember them. I go through one and then another. It is about a woman who's actually blue, and it's based on a true story, but it takes place, I think, in the hills of Kentucky. And she has a donkey, and she goes from little place to little place, giving out library books to the poor. And it's a wonderful story. The Library Woman of Troublesome Creek, I believe, is the correct title.
Oh, that sounds lovely.
And my all-time favorite is A Tree Grows in Brooklyn.
Yes.
Because every time I read it, I cry.
Yes.
And I can feel for this little girl.
Yeah.
But gosh, each book I read is my favorite.
Yeah, so while you're reading, it's true. Now, are you one of those readers? I get started on a book, and if it doesn't grip me, I put it down. My son feels, my writer-reader son, feels that he has an obligation to the author to finish the book. And he will finish, first of all, he chooses his books carefully, so he's not a random chooser, but he will finish a book to the end, no matter whether he's enjoying it or not. What kind of a reader are you?
I used to be like him, and then I decided, my time it's too valuable. I can't do that. But I did see a movie once. I had a friend who saw every single movie, and this particular movie was just so bad. She said, I cannot sit through this. I'll wait in the lobby. And I said, it only has 15 minutes to go. And all of a sudden, everything came together, and the movie was fabulous. But you had to sit through the beginning. Anyway, one of the books that I wrote is Tangled Ribbons, is sort of like that. You've got to get through the book, and then at the end you go, oh my God. So now I'm a little hesitant, do I finish a book or not? But it depends on the way it's written and what the story's about and if it holds my interest.
Yeah, okay. And so today I thought what we might talk about is both your newest book, but also the fact that your book that just got the third edition, right? Um, and the reason I'm so fascinated with that book is that my grandmother, I'm writing my grandmother's memoir, and she discovered that she loved women at the age of 50. And I have all the letters and the love letters that she wrote to this woman that she met who was a poet. And so she wrote all these letters, and the poet kept them. And so I have copies of all the letters she wrote her, but not the letters that she wrote back. And she said that she didn't know. She was a mother of five. She'd been married. She said she just didn't know that she loved women. But once she found out she did, it was like the most wonderful, like the second half of her life. So tell us a little bit about that book.
It's like going through a new adolescence or first adolescence. I had I was just having tea with a girlfriend of mine, and I looked across the table and I thought, oh my God, I'm in love with this woman. And here I am, married for 25 years, two kids, and it never crossed my mind. I lived in New York. I don't think I knew, I know I didn't know anybody who was gay, who was lesbian. And I was in a very cloistered, little white picket fence kind of world. But when this happened, our friendship was based on such openness and honesty that I found myself telling her, and she said, oh no, you're in love with the idea of feminism, sisterhood.
Mm.
Anyway, I went on a quest to find out, was it her or was it me? And I could find no reading material. Long story short, I did an article for Ms. called Married Women Who Love Women. I didn't come out to anybody. Um, it was going to be published in Ms. Magazine, and then the editor left, and it was just kind of put in a drawer. Anyway, when I decided, I was at a workshop and they were asking for questions for book titles. And I was too lazy to create one, so I came up with this Married Women Who Love Women. And all of a sudden there was a hush in the audience, and I thought, whoa, I just outed myself to all of these people, and now nobody's going to be speaking to me all week. And then a woman raises her hand and says, how does a woman make the discovery? What kind of husbands are they married to? How do their children deal with it? How is sex different with women? And I realized that if all of these women had these questions, everyone had the same questions. Meanwhile, there was nothing at the time that I could find in the libraries. And the librarian had told me sometimes that if people had a topic that they didn't like, they'd actually take out the book and destroy it. And only if somebody else asked for that book would they know to reorder it, that it was missing. So things like that happened. Anyway, when I wrote the article at the beginning, I did it in third person. And when I came back to this article thinking it's going to be a book, I realized it was very dry. And the only way it could be an honest book and be taken honestly is if I was honest. And so I had to come out to my family, to my friends, and use my real name in the book. And it was frightening. Like I thought, a friend of mine playing devil's advocate said, what's more important, you or the book? And I realized it wasn't an either or. I was supposed to write the book.
Excuse me.
And I have to say that after the book came out, after the first edition came out, I was doing a reading, and this woman approached me, clutching the book and sobbing. She said she would have come through any weather, any distance to tell me that my book saved her life. And I still get goose pimples when I tell the story. She thought she was the only married woman ever to have fallen in love with another woman and didn't know where to turn, who to talk to, and she thought the only thing she could do was kill herself. She planned her suicide on a night when she knew her husband and children were going to be home late. And she was just coming home from work for what she thought would be the last time. She passed a bookstore and they were putting my book in the window. When she saw the title, she knew she wasn't alone. And how synchronistic is that? And that's why I know I was supposed to write the book.
Yeah.
Anyway, times have changed now, and I've gotten a lot of emails, and as somebody, I had some emails saying, well, what about the single lovers of married women? And I realized that needed to be another chapter. And now the transgender community has come to the forefront. And I realized they had been excluded from the book and they needed a place in it too. And so that was the publisher asked me to do a third edition. And that's why that came about. Meanwhile, as I was writing that book, I was learning to write as I wrote that book. And so all the mistakes I made, all the things I did right and the things I did wrong, I kept lists of. And I started doing a workshop at this writers' conference called What to Know About Writing a Book. And that became my second book, What to Know Before, During, and After Writing a Book.
Mhm.
And it's the book I wish I had when I started writing. It would have been much easier to write the first book. But
Yes.
everything comes, I believe it comes into my world when it's supposed to. So that book came about. And then each of the books followed. I was doing a visualization workshop, and we had to sort of go into a trance-like state. And I envisioned this young woman on the beach on a mound of sand. And when she turned to the side, she was pregnant. And all of a sudden, this name Mallory McGill came to me out of nowhere. Don't know anybody by that name. And I realized this was a mystery that took place in Coney Island. And
Mhm.
that was how that book came about. The rhyming children's book, we had just moved back to Brooklyn, and I was taking a walk early in the morning, and I passed a park, and people were doing Tai Chi. And I said, how would a child feel about all these old people in his park doing Tai Chi? And that started the story about Grandpa and me in the park in the city.
Mhm.
And so each book has its own, I'm thinking of the others.
Little its own special
Yeah, and I
beginning.
can't, they say that you have to pick one genre so you get an audience that follows you. And that's what a lot of writers do. This is a mystery writer. This is an adventure writer. This is a romance writer. And I can't do that because I love everything I'm working on.
Yeah,
It
you and
makes it
I,
really.
you and I feel the same way. When I finished my first book, my publisher said, "Well, do you have another one like it?" And I said, "No, why would I write another one like it? Like, no, how about a series? No, nope, nope. I'm done with. I love them, but I'm done with them. And you imagine what happened to them. I'm moving on to my next family. So that is good. So tell me about Secret Survivors.
Oh, that's my favorite book right now. As a matter of fact, I'm just preparing a 5-minute read for that book for another talk. But when my children were little, we lived in Buffalo, and we got a lot of snow there. And I thought to myself, what would happen if the children came home from school and we weren't there? If they were let out early because of a blizzard or something. And that kind of gelled with me over the years. And we had some discussions at the dinner table, what would happen to us if there was a blizzard and you and Daddy weren't home, my son asked when he was about 12. Anyway, that was years and years in the making until I finally said, this book has to come out. I had a friend who used to ask me as I started on the book, what are you up to now? What are you up to now? And when I shelved it, she said, you can't, that's a book that has to be out there. It has to be a movie. So I wish I could find somebody who had a connection. It's very difficult to get a book into the hands of a producer.
It
You need
is.
to go through an agent who first wants your manuscript for the book. So that's what I'm dealing with now, trying to get it out there. But it's such an exciting story. It's about two children, two young teens that hate each other, the girl and the boy. And they are stranded in the Colorado mountains during the blizzard with 5 small children that they're responsible for. And they must learn to work together or nobody's going to survive.
Mm.
So it's an adventure story. And adults who have read it before giving it to their children have said, I got so cold I had to make hot chocolate. I couldn't stop until I got to the end, or I was crying. And so I know
Oh,
that's
that's wonderful. Well, my 9-year-old, my middle grandson, he has met through this series. He has met some wonderful writers, and he's so impressed that I know that I've met, the writers. So I said, "Well, here's another author that I'm meeting, and here's her book." And I said, "After you finish reading it, we'll talk about it, and then we will write a review." Because I got him into writing reviews of his books. He's very he loves books. So you must look for uh, our review of Secret Survivors as soon as he's finished, which he only just got the book on Monday. So I imagine he's finished tomorrow because he gets going and he just reads to the end. But he was
good for you.
very excited to read it. I wanted to
And may I just say, there are other books out with the title Secret Survivors that I didn't know till mine was published. So you have to look for Secret Survivors by Carren Strock.
yeah, I
And
did.
that's Karen with a
It had that
C.
great cover with the kids, the two kids, and I thought you had a
I
great
have to tell
cover.
you, I painted the cover. That was a painting that I did.
Wow, I
Uh,
love the cover. It's so
Thank you.
it captures the story.
I think
It's
I have
do
it.
you have it copy with you?
Let's see here.
Look at that audience, secret survivors. Doesn't that look great? And she painted the cover. I wanted to, before we go, I wanted to ask you, but when we were chatting before we got on,
Mhm.
you told me about that first writing teacher that tried to discourage you. And, the writing journey is always of interest to readers and writers alike who are watching us. So, could you just tell me briefly about your writing journey from that terrible man to what happened next?
Well, this was a college professor who told me I was not a writer, and I believed him and didn't pick up a pen for 15 years. And then Robert Redford came to town. They were filming The Natural up in Buffalo, and I signed on to be an extra. So I was on the set every day for about a month. And every night I came home, and my neighbors, my friends, my family all bombarded me with questions. And I said to a friend of mine who was a playwright, I said, I'm so tired of telling the same story over and over. And she said, well, why don't you write it? And I could still hear this teacher's negative voice in my head, you're not a writer. And I said, I can't, I'm not a writer. And she said, well, just put down everything that happened and I'll make it into a story for you. And what she did is she relieved me of the angst. And
Mm.
I just picked up a pen and a paper and I started writing. I saw an ad in the paper. Anyway, when I finished, I gave it to her and she said, Carren, it's a story and it's finished. Anyway, I sent it into the Seven Sisters magazines and months went by. I totally forgot about it. And then I got a phone call from, this is Rebecca Greer from Women's Day magazine. And I thought she was trying to sell me something. I said, I'm not interested in the subscription. And she started laughing. She said, no, no, we want your article. And I had my camera with me. So at the same time, I took pictures. And there was a one night developing place. And every day I came in with the pictures and the other extras were buying my pictures. So they wound up using my pictures with this article in Women's Day. And then it was published in Women's, a magazine in Australia and one in England. And that was my first article as the major piece in this magazine, me and Robert Redford. And then I went on to do a lot of little articles. And I always felt, well, no, if they just had a space in the magazine, I'm not really a writer, but they needed to fill the space until I realized they don't need to fill a space. They've got plenty of material and they wanted to fill it with my stuff. So that gave me a little more confidence. And when I started on the book, I had 29 rejections from various agents, no, from publishers and agents, and I rejected 9 agents. As my confidence was growing, um, I started the book with Married Women Who Love Women began as a tribute to a woman who had done what she needed to do. And one agent said, done is not the proper word. I mean, it most certainly was. And I thought, if she's going to nitpick with every word, she's not the
Not
person
for
for
you.
me. And then there was somebody else, and I said, I'll be patient, I'll be patient. And I didn't call her for 4 months. And when I finally called, she said, oh yeah, your manuscript's on the desk. I was just getting around to sending it out. And I thought, it could sit on my desk as well as hers for 4 months. Anyway, long story short, after these agents, I sent it to NYU Press and they liked it. They sent it out to be vetted and it came back with a very good response, but they were offering very little money and they wanted to keep the copyright. And my son, who's now, he's a writer and a publisher, he does science fiction. He says, Mom, do not give it to them. I said, but once it's published, then I'll be able to sell it. He said, if they don't give you a nice advance, they have no need to publicize your book. Nobody's going to know it's there. Anyway, so I continued to wait. And they were having a writers' conference, the American Society of Journalists and Authors. And they were reviewing people's manuscripts for X dollars. They had a class. So I sent my manuscript in. One of the reviewers was an agent that I really, really wanted. Anyway, when this class started, I ran to the front of the room and I said, I just wanted to know if you received my manuscript. My name is Carren Strock. She says, yes, and I want to talk to you after this talk. Anyway, they used my manuscript. They pulled it apart, the title, the this, the that. You would have paid a fortune to get the kind of critiques that I got. And
Mm.
afterward, I went to her and I said, I don't know, she said, yes, I wanted to talk to you. She says, I love your story, I love the writing, but it wouldn't be fair to me or to you or to my other clients for me to take you on because I have so many things in the works now. But if you don't find an agent within 3 months, call me back. So this time I took my manuscript and put it in the drawer and I circled her name on the calendar. And 3 months later, I called her back and she said, well, I'm really uncomfortable with the title. Too many things are going on. And I learned from my boss that when you have a question, you ask the question and then utter silence, and eventually the other person will feel compelled to fill in the silence. So I said to her, you said you like the way I write. You said it's an important story. If you don't want to represent me, who can you recommend? And that was it. And I just didn't say another word. And the silence grew longer and longer. And finally, she gave me the name of an agent. And she said, but don't tell her that I told you. I don't know if she was uncomfortable with her own personal life. That's one of the ahas I've learned, and I'd like to share that with everybody. But anyway, long story short, so I called this agent. I prepared an elevator pitch. An elevator pitch is like a 2 minute, not even 2 minutes description of your work, because it's they're kind of like doctors. After the first 30 seconds, they don't listen anymore. So I called and I gave her that, and she said, "Oh, I'd be interested in seeing it. Send it." But instead of sending it, I went down. I worked in Brooklyn, and I took the subway into Manhattan before work, and I left it on her secretary's desk with my work number on it. And I don't know why, because I normally never put my work number on my personal business. But I went back, and 2 hours later, I got a phone call. She had picked up the manuscript. She says, I couldn't put it down. I want 22 copies. I'm sending it to auction on Monday. And that means to a bidding war with it. I was like,
Wow, wow, wow.
so
You've
it
had an
was very
incredible
exciting.
journey.
Yeah, very
You've had an
exciting.
amazing, amazing journey. Thank you so much for sharing it with our audience. If those who are listening and watching, if they have a question and want to be in touch with you, what would be the best way? Can you tell us your website? Tell us
Absolutely.
what's the best way?
My website is my name, Carren Strock, Strock.com. And my email is cstrock@yahoo.com. But I'd like to share my three ahas, which came from my writing.
Sure.
And the first one is no expectations, no disappointments. I just show up. If somebody is interested in the book, they want it. It doesn't really matter. And the second one is nobody knows what you're thinking unless you say the words. And the third one, which I think is most important, is it really isn't about me. If I say something to you and you can't deal with it, that's your issue. You're on your own journey. And those things have been so freeing. And I think they've helped my writing 100%.
Wow, that is beautiful. What a great place for us to end. That is beautiful advice. That is truly beautiful advice. It was so nice meeting you. And I hope all of you have enjoyed this episode. And I hope that we will see you next time.